All right, so today we're going to be taking a deep dive into Ukraine's security situation.
Yeah.
And kind of what it means for the future of Europe as a whole.
Yeah, it's really interesting right now. There's some seriously insightful analysis out there.
Oh, for sure.
That goes way beyond just, the headlines and thinks about, what are the potential paths to peace?
Right.
What are the challenges when it comes to these security guarantees everybody's talking about? And there's even some discussion about a whole new security setup for Europe.
Wow.
So
buckle up.
Yeah, buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride.
So one thing that I think is really interesting is how the conversation around Ukraine joining NATO has really shifted.
Oh, absolutely.
Remember back in 2008 at the Bucharest summit?
Yeah.
That was like the hot topic.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone was talking about it.
It was a big deal.
And now it seems like, everyone from the U.S. government to Zelensky himself is kind of realizing that it's just not in the cards right now.
Yeah, it seems like, that ghost of the Bucharest summit is finally being laid to rest.
Right.
But, that leaves a huge question, hanging in the air.
Yeah.
If NATO membership is off the table, what are the alternatives?
Yeah, what are we going to do to actually safeguard Ukraine?
Well, some European nations are throwing around this idea of providing security guarantees themselves.
Okay.
And they're even, some of them are even talking about deploying troops.
Worry.
But, let's be real, that path is full of potholes.
Oh, yeah. I can only imagine the logistics of that.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
Trying to secure a front line that's longer than the entire California coastline.
Yeah.
Right up against Russia and Belarus.
It's a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about the numbers. Some estimates say you would need over 50,000 troops.
Wow.
To even begin to secure that kind of border.
Jeez.
And that's a huge ask for European countries.
Yeah.
Many of whom are already, struggling to meet their NATO commitments as it is.
Right. So,
frankly, some experts are calling this a bluff and plead strategy.
A bluff and plead strategy.
Yeah. They're talking a big game, but they lack the resources to back it up.
Yeah. That's a pretty harsh assessment.
It is.
But I guess it raises the question of why would European leaders even consider this?
Right.
Like, what's the motivation behind all this tough talk?
Well, it's a mix of things.
Okay.
I mean, you've got this genuine desire to protect Ukraine.
Of course.
Right? You've got the pressure to show a united front against Russia. And then, maybe even a little bit of political posturing going on.
Right.
But the reality is, even if European nations were to commit troops, they would likely still need significant support from the U.S.
Totally.
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about it. Logistics, intelligence, air refueling.
Wow.
All that stuff. And what does that mean?
Yeah.
American boots on the ground.
Right.
Even if it's in smaller numbers.
Yeah.
Which, that increases the risk of the U.S. getting dragged into a future conflict.
So it's almost like this dependence on U.S. military is kind of a double-edged sword.
It is.
Europe wants to show that they're independent.
Right.
But they're still reliant on the U.S. to provide the muscle.
Exactly. And this situation really underscores how much Europe relies on American military capabilities.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, how can Europe achieve true autonomy when it comes to defense planning?
Right.
When they're constantly having to look across the Atlantic for support.
Yeah, it seems like this whole troop deployment debate is kind of leading us down a rabbit hole.
It might be.
Is there a more practical way to guarantee Ukraine's security?
Well, the analysis that we're looking at here suggests a different approach.
Okay.
Instead of fixating on troop deployments, which, may be unrealistic and even counterproductive, it argues for a more direct focus on strengthening Ukraine's own defensive capabilities. And, Ukraine has already shown incredible resilience and adaptability in this conflict.
That's true.
They've been using weapons and tactics that have surprised everyone and effectively holding back a much larger military force.
It's true. Like those FPV drones that they've been using.
Oh, yeah.
They're incredibly effective on the battlefield.
Super effective.
And relatively inexpensive.
Yeah. And it really highlights how, cost-effective defense strategies can be a game changer.
Yeah. For sure.
So imagine if those kinds of successes were scaled up.
Right.
The analysis argues for sustained investment in giving Ukraine the tools it needs.
Okay.
Weapons, training, financial resources, everything to deter future aggression.
So instead of putting boots on the ground,
yeah,
we're talking about equipping Ukraine to be the defender of its own security.
Exactly.
That's a pretty big shift in thinking.
It is. And it makes a lot of sense, but the analysis goes even deeper.
Okay.
It urges us to tackle the root causes of this conflict. We're talking about those simmering issues that have been brewing since 2014.
I'm listening. Where do we even begin to untangle that mess?
Well, the analysis points to two key factors that I think have been largely ignored.
Yeah.
First, the eastward expansion of NATO and the EU.
Right.
Which Russia has always viewed as a threat.
Mm-hmm.
And second, the exclusion of Russia from any real discussions about European security.
Right.
Ignoring these issues has only fueled the fire.
That's a pretty controversial take.
It is.
I mean, a lot of people would argue that NATO expansion was a necessary response to Russian aggression.
Sure. Of course, it's a complex issue, and there are passionate opinions on all sides.
Right.
But the core point here is that resolving these fundamental issues is absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Not just for peace in Ukraine, but for preventing similar conflicts from erupting in other vulnerable places.
Like where?
Like Moldova or Georgia.
Oh, wow.
So it sounds like we're talking about a pretty fundamental shift in thinking, moving away from this NATO-centric view of European security toward a more inclusive approach that takes Russia's concerns seriously.
Right. And this brings us to, I think, one of the most interesting ideas in the analysis.
Yeah.
This possibility of Ukraine embracing a neutral status.
Neutrality, yeah.
Tell me more about that. What would that look like in practice?
Well, it would involve some pretty big steps for Ukraine.
Okay.
First, giving up on NATO membership altogether.
Wow.
Second, no more hosting foreign troops on their soil.
Okay.
It also might involve finding a way to align economically with the EU while simultaneously addressing some of Russia's security concerns.
That's a lot to unpack.
It is.
I mean, it raises some huge questions about Ukraine's sovereignty, their national identity, and the trade-offs required to achieve lasting peace.
You're absolutely right. There are no easy answers here.
Right.
But the analysis forces us to grapple with this question. Could neutrality, however difficult it might be to achieve, ultimately be the best path to a more stable and secure future for Ukraine?
So instead of focusing on purely military solutions, this approach advocates for a more comprehensive resolution.
Yes.
That tackles these underlying geopolitical factors.
Exactly.
It's a big ask, but I see the logic.
It is a big ask. It's a bold proposition and arguably controversial.
Yeah.
But it highlights the need for creative, outside-the-box thinking.
Right.
If we want to de-escalate tensions and build a more lasting peace.
So if neutrality is one piece of the puzzle, are there other approaches being considered?
Absolutely. The analysis also pushes for a shift away from these NATO-centric debates and toward a more direct dialogue between the U.S. and Russia. Think, something along the lines of reviving arms control agreements.
Interesting.
Like a successor to the Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe.
That seems like a long shot given the current state of relations between President Trump and, well, everyone.
It's definitely ambitious, no doubt about it. Yeah. But it underscores the importance of exploring all avenues for dialogue and diplomacy.
Right.
However unlikely they may seem, the potential benefits are such an agreement.
Yeah.
Reduced military risks, increased trust, are simply too significant to ignore.
It seems like this analysis is really pushing us to think beyond the immediate crisis.
It is.
And consider these broader, long-term implications for European security.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we need right now.
Yeah.
The situation in Ukraine isn't just a regional conflict.
Right.
It's a symptom of much deeper geopolitical tensions that need to be addressed if we want to prevent similar crises from happening in the future.
It's clear that the path to lasting peace in Ukraine is full of challenges.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to require some tough decisions and a willingness to confront complex geopolitical realities.
Absolutely.
But I think this deep dive has given us at least a glimpse into the intricate web of factors at play here. and the potential pathways to a more secure future for Ukraine and Europe.
I couldn't agree more. And it leaves us with so much to ponder.
Right.
What are the potential implications of a neutral Ukraine?
Right.
What concessions would Russia be willing to make in exchange for such a status?
Mm-hmm.
And how could a new European security architecture be constructed that addresses the concerns of all parties involved? This whole neutrality idea for Ukraine really got me thinking about, like historical parallels. For a short time, Ukraine had the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world.
Jeez.
It's crazy to think about.
Can you imagine the weight of that responsibility?
Oh, I can't even fathom it.
Yeah. So what happened to all those nukes?
Well, in exchange for security assurances from the US, the UK, and Russia, Ukraine agreed to completely denuclearize.
Wow.
They transferred all their warheads to Russia to be dismantled.
So they basically traded their most powerful deterrent for a promise of protection.
It was a huge gamble.
It really was. And, that deal, the Budapest Memorandum, has been the subject of so much debate.
Oh, yeah.
Especially since Russia's actions in Crimea and eastern Ukraine.
Right.
It's hard not to see it as a cautionary tale.
It is.
That even the most well-intentioned security guarantees can be fragile.
They can be. And it really underscores why building a truly robust and lasting security architecture in Europe is so vital.
Right.
One that considers the concerns of all parties involved, not just a select few.
It's so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day headlines.
Yeah.
And miss the bigger picture.
It is.
But this analysis really forces us to think long-term. What kind of world do we want to build for future generations?
I couldn't agree more. And what makes this conversation so crucial is that we're not just talking about, abstract geopolitical theories. Right.
We're talking about the lives and futures of real people.
Yeah.
The people of Ukraine and the wider European community, their fate is intertwined with these decisions.
That's what always strikes me about these deep dives.
Yeah.
We might start with a specific issue, like Ukraine's security, but we inevitably end up grappling with these big fundamental questions about peace, justice, and what international relations should actually look like in the 21st century.
Yeah, it speaks to how interconnected our world truly is.
It does.
Even conflicts that seem far away can ripple outward and touch all our lives in unexpected ways.
Right.
It's a reminder that we all have a stake in finding solutions in building a more peaceful and stable world for everyone.
So if we agree that peace is the ultimate goal, what can we as informed and engaged citizens do to contribute to that effort?
Well, I think the first step is simple but powerful: stay informed.
Okay.
Keep seeking out diverse perspectives, even those you might disagree with.
Right.
And engage in these crucial conversations with an open mind.
That's the foundation of progress.
That's what we try to do here on The Deep Dive, right? Yeah. Give our listeners the knowledge and tools they need to make sense of this complex world.
Exactly.
To empower them to be active participants in shaping their own future.
Precisely. By fostering a more informed and engaged citizenry, we can create the conditions for a more peaceful and just future.
I love that knowledge is power.
It is.
And collective action is the key to unlocking that power and using it for good.
Beautifully put. And on that note, I want to thank you, our listener, for joining us on this deep dive into the complexities of Ukraine's security and what it means for the future of Europe.
Yeah.
We hope this conversation has sparked your curiosity, broadened your understanding, and inspired you to keep seeking knowledge and engaging in these critical issues that shape our world.
Well said. And remember, stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged.
Yes.
The world needs your voice, your insights, and your commitment to building a better future.
Absolutely. Together, we can make a difference.
Subscribe to our podcast. Available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.
Yes.
We're here to make things clear. New episodes every day.